I invite you to listen to the story of the day the intern spilled coffee on me and loudly proclaimed her husband was the CEO of this hospital. I calmly called my husband. You should come down here and see this. Your new wife is throwing coffee on me. The massive Boeing 787 touched down hard on the runway at JFK International Airport. After more than 12 hours flying from Frankfurt, the roaring engines slowly quieted, and a calm silence settled inside the business class cabin. I closed the book I had been reading, smoothed the wrinkles in my trousers, and reached up to grab my carry-on bag from the overhead compartment. As I stepped onto the jet bridge, the thick summer air of New York hit me immediately. Humid, noisy, alive. That unmistakable scent of the city filled my lungs. Anyone who has ever left New York for a while knows that strange feeling, when you come back and the chaos somehow feels like home. My name is Catherine Hayes. I'm 32 years old. To the outside world, I'm the woman who has everything. I'm the sole heir to the late chairman of Apex Medical Group, holding a 60% controlling stake in one of the largest private hospital systems in the United States. Which means, technically, the final decisions all come down to me. But what people don't see is the weight that comes with that title. When my father died suddenly from a severe illness, the entire empire he built was suddenly resting on my shoulders. Board meetings, shareholder negotiations, financial pressure, public expectations. And somehow, in the middle of all that, trying to maintain something that looked like a normal marriage. This trip to Germany had lasted exactly 1 month. I spent that month personally visiting manufacturing facilities, negotiating contracts, and securing new medical equipment for our flagship hospital. It was work that technically should have been done by the CEO, my husband, Mark Thompson, but Mark had talents and limitations. He was charismatic, charming, great at shaking hands and making powerful friends. But when it came to technical negotiations or complex decisions, he struggled. So behind the scenes, I handled everything. Officially, I was the chief strategy officer. But in reality, I cleared the path so he could shine. When I exited the terminal, a sleek black town car was waiting for me at the VIP pickup lane. The driver greeted me politely, and we soon began gliding across the Whitestone Bridge toward Manhattan. But instead of going home, I made a different decision. I told the driver to take me to the hospital. I wanted to see how things were running during my absence. Apex University Hospital stood proudly on the Upper East Side. 20 floors of blue-tinted glass reflecting the afternoon sun, my father's greatest achievement. As I looked at the building, I felt pride and a strange sense of unease I couldn't explain. Instead of using the executive entrance, I asked the driver to drop me off at the main lobby. I wanted to walk in like a normal visitor. No announcements, no preparation, just observe. Inside, the lobby was busy, patients waiting, families whispering, doctors rushing past. The familiar controlled chaos of a functioning hospital. The faint scent of antiseptic floated in the cool air. I stood quietly near the reception desk for a moment. Then something caught my attention. In the center of the lobby, a man in white scrubs was kneeling beside a patient on the marble floor. Dr. David Chen, head of cardiology, and one of the best doctors in the entire hospital. He was performing CPR on a man who had collapsed from a hypoglycemic attack. Sweat dripped down David's forehead, but his movements were calm, precise, focused. "Give him space," he instructed firmly. "Nurse, I need a glucose meter and warm sugar water." Watching him work reminded me of something important. David had never changed. 15 years ago, he was the same person, quiet, dedicated, brilliant. When my father died, David spent 3 days helping manage everything while Mark entertained business guests. That was the kind of man he was, a healer. But the peaceful scene was suddenly shattered. Near the revolving doors, a shrill voice cut through the lobby. "Hey, what is wrong with you?" I turned. A young woman was yelling at the valet. She looked about 22 years old. Heavy makeup, bright pink dress, completely inappropriate for a hospital setting. Her name badge read, Tiffany. The elderly valet she was yelling at was Henry. He had worked here since my father built the hospital. Henry apologized politely, explaining the parking lot was busy, but Tiffany didn't listen. Instead, she pulled out her phone and switched on a live stream. Suddenly, her angry expression turned into a sweet smile. "Good morning, everyone," she chirped to her followers. I glanced at my watch. 9:15 a.m. She was late, out of uniform, publicly humiliating a staff member, and live streaming inside the hospital. My patience snapped. I walked over calmly. "This is a hospital," I said firmly. "Not a stage for social media." Tiffany looked me up and down with open disgust. "And who are you?" she sneered. Then she shoved her phone toward my face. "Look at this, everyone," she told her viewers. "Some bitter old woman harassing me." The insult was shocking, but the next moment was worse. She suddenly bumped into me, hard. Her iced coffee spilled across my white suit. Cold liquid soaked through the fabric. Gasps spread through the lobby. Then Tiffany began fake crying loudly for her live stream. "She attacked me," she shouted dramatically. The crowd looked confused. Then she leaned close to me and whispered something venomous. "You better apologize," she hissed. "My husband is Mark Thompson, the CEO of this hospital." For a moment, I simply stared at her. My husband? Instead of yelling, I calmly pulled out my phone. "You said your husband is Mark Thompson." "That's right," she smirked. Before I could respond, David stepped between us. His presence alone quieted the crowd. He calmly called out her violations of hospital rules. But Tiffany doubled down, threatening to get him fired. That's when I made a decision. I called Mark. When he answered, I turned on speaker. "You need to come to the lobby," I said. He tried to protest, said he was in an important meeting. I didn't care. "Come down here and see your new wife throwing coffee on me," I said. The lobby went silent. 5 minutes later, the private elevator doors opened. Mark rushed out, breathing heavily, his suit disheveled. When he saw me standing there in a coffee-stained suit beside David, he knew something was very wrong. But Tiffany ran straight to him. She grabbed his arm dramatically. "Honey, you're here," she cried. "This crazy woman and that loser David were bullying me." She pointed at me furiously. "She spilled coffee on me and threatened to fire me." Mark stood frozen, his arm rigid in her grasp. He stared at me, his lips moving but no words coming out. Fear was etched on his face. He knew better than anyone that the woman before him was not just his wife. She was the chairwoman, the one who held his fate, his CEO title, and all the wealth he enjoyed in the palm of her hand. "Mark," I prompted, my lips curling into a smile that made him shudder. "What's the matter, CEO Thompson? Your beloved is crying for justice." "Aren't you going to do something?" Tiffany, sensing Mark's strange hesitation, shook his arm. "What's wrong with you? Say something, everyone is watching. You have to show them who's in charge." Mark turned to look at Tiffany. The look in his eyes was no longer the adoration of a lover, but pure, unadulterated hatred. He realized that this stupid, arrogant girl had just lit the fuse on the bomb that would obliterate his career. And then it happened. Smack! A sharp, explosive sound echoed through the lobby. Mark swung his arm and delivered a vicious slap across Tiffany's face. The force of the blow sent her staggering backward, tripping and falling hard onto the marble floor. The phone flew from her hand, skittering across the tile, its live stream still running. Tiffany clutched her cheek where the red imprint of 5 fingers was already forming. She looked up at Mark, her eyes wide with disbelief. She couldn't understand what was happening. The man who just last night had sworn his undying love and promised to buy her a house and a car was now striking her in front of hundreds of people. "Shut your mouth," Mark screamed, his voice cracking with fear and rage. "What the hell are you talking about, calling yourself my wife? I don't know you, you're crazy." "Stop spreading these lies," the entire lobby gasped. The reversal was shocking, brutal, and utterly pathetic. Mark turned back to me, his aggressive demeanor vanishing instantly, replaced by a graveling, desperate expression. He clasped his hands together, his voice shaking. Catherine, honey, please let me explain. I honestly have no idea who she is. She must be some obsessed fan or some delusional person trying to get attention. Please, you have to believe me. You're my only wife. I watched his pathetic performance with a rising wave of nausea. A man who refused to take responsibility for his actions, who would throw his mistress under the bus without a second thought to save himself. On the floor, after a moment of shock, Tiffany snapped. The physical pain was nothing compared to the public humiliation. She realized she had been betrayed, discarded like a used toy. Her aggressive nature took over. She shrieked, throwing all caution to the wind. "Mark Thompson, you dare hit me. You don't know me. Then who was it in my bed at the Mandarin Oriental last night? Who signed the papers for the condo in Hudson Yards in my name? You've been sleeping with me for months, and now that your rich wife is here, you pretend you don't know me." Her accusations were like a bucket of ice water thrown in Mark's face. All his denials were now meaningless. The phone on the floor was capturing every word, every image, and broadcasting it across the internet. "You shut up right now." Mark lunged toward Tiffany to silence her, but David was faster. He stepped forward, grabbing Mark by the shoulder and pushing him back. The strength of a surgeon who keeps himself in shape easily overpowered a man softened by years of lavish dinners and affairs. "That's enough," David said coldly. "Stop making a fool of yourself. You are disgracing this institution." I walked slowly towards Mark. The clicking of my heels on the marble floor sounded like a judge's gavel. I looked him straight in the eye, all traces of affection gone. "You said you don't know her," I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. "Then why does she have keycard access to your office? And why did her bank account receive a $2 million transfer from your secret offshore account last month?" Mark's eyes widened in horror. He never imagined I knew about that $2 million, the money he had embezzled from the new MRI machine procurement project. He thought he had hidden it so well through a series of shell corporations. "What are you talking about? I don't know anything about that," Mark stammered, still trying to lie. Just then, Arthur Vance emerged from the crowd, a thick file in his hands. He walked to my side, bowed his head respectfully, and handed me the folder. "Madame Chairwoman, here are the complete bank statements, the purchase contract for the condo in Miss Tiffany Jones's name, and the security footage from the Mandarin Oriental for the past 3 months, all legally obtained." I took the file and threw it at Mark's feet. The white pages scattered across the floor, exposing the naked truth for all to see. "Read it," I commanded. "Read it and see exactly what you've been doing behind my back." Mark stared at the scattered papers, his face ashen. He knew he was defeated. He trembled and collapsed to his knees, grabbing the hem of my pantsuit, begging, "Catherine, honey, I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. Please, for the sake of our 10 years of marriage, forgive me. Just this once. I swear I'll break up with her. I'll do anything. I'll be your slave. Just please forgive me." The sight of the hospital CEO on his knees, crying and begging his wife, sent another wave of shock through the lobby. Oh my God, so she really is the chairwoman. The chairwoman went undercover. This is better than a movie, serves him right. Cheating, embezzling piece of trash. Tiffany sat in a daysaze in the corner, watching the man who had been her ticket to a lavish life, groveling pathetically. She understood that her dream of being a CEO's wife had shattered into a million pieces. Not only that, she was now facing legal trouble for receiving stolen funds. I looked down at the man kneeling at my feet without a shred of pity. "Our 10 years of marriage," I scoffed. "When you were stealing money meant to save lives to buy your mistress a condo, did you think of our marriage? When you let her insult me and my employees, did you think of our marriage?" I pulled my leg away from his grasp and turned to face the crowd of employees. In a loud, clear voice, I made my declaration. "I am Catherine Hayes, chairwoman of the board for the Apex Medical Group. I am announcing that effective immediately, Mr. Mark Thompson is officially terminated from his position as CEO for gross ethical violations and suspicion of felony embezzlement." All decisions made by him from this moment forward are null and void. My announcement was like a sledgehammer, shattering the last vestiges of Mark Thompson's dignity. The lobby erupted in a chorus of murmurs that quickly grew into open discussion. I saw looks of triumph in the eyes of the nurses and staff whom Mark had bullied. I saw relief on the faces of the honest doctors. However, Mark wasn't ready to surrender. The survival instincts of a cornered rat kicked in. He lifted his tear-cad face, but his eyes held a familiar, cunning glint. He struggled to his feet, trying to brush the dust from his knees and reclaim some of his former authority. "Catherine, you can't do this to me," Mark shrieked, his voice laced with a false sense of victimhood. "You can't just use some unverified bank statements to accuse me of embezzlement." That $2 million was an investment for the new hospital wing project. The paperwork just hasn't been finalized yet. You're misunderstanding everything. He turned to the crowd, raising his hands as if taking an oath. "Everyone, listen to me. I am CEO Mark Thompson. I have dedicated the last 5 years of my life to this hospital. I would never do anything to harm it. This is a conspiracy, a blatant frame-up. I watched his clumsy performance in silence, an investment in a new wing. A pathetic excuse he'd concocted on the spot. Did he really think he could fool me and the law by blaming paperwork? I didn't need to say a word." Someone else stepped forward from the crowd, armed with a truth sharper than any accusation. An investment in the new wing. David's calm, steely voice cut through the air. He walked forward, holding a tablet displaying real-time inventory data. He stood opposite Mark, a head taller, his presence completely overwhelming. He held up the tablet for everyone to see. "Mr. Thompson, you claim you were investing in a new wing, but our asset management system tells a very different story. 2 weeks ago, you signed off on the purchase of 10 top-of-the-line ventilators and a new generation MRI system. This was at the exact time the chairwoman was in Germany negotiating those very deals. The total contract value was $2 million. How do you explain that?" Mark sputtered, sweat pouring down his face. "The shipment is on its way. There are complications with customs. What do you know about international logistics?" David gave a cold, contemptuous smile. He swiped his finger across the screen, displaying an email. "I may not be an expert in customs, but I can read. This is a confirmation email from our German supplier, which they sent to me this morning. They confirm they have never received any payment from Apex for this order. And of course, no equipment has left their warehouse." Another collective gasp went through the lobby. David's evidence was irrefutable. He pressed on. His words like a surgeon's precise cuts, stripping away Mark's lies. "You claimed the equipment was on its way, yet our warehouse is empty. You used the excuse of needing an urgent down payment to secure the order, embezzled the funds, and transferred them to a shell company. While Miss Jones here was suddenly able to purchase a luxury condo for that exact amount. Did you really think the chairwoman wouldn't find out?" Mark was speechless, stumbling backward, his body trembling. He never imagined David would be so well-informed. He had always seen David as a bookish nerd, obsessed with medicine and surgery, not someone who would be tracking his financial misdeeds. I looked at David with a new level of admiration. It turned out that while I was away, he had not only excelled at his medical duties, but had also been silently protecting my family's legacy. He had gathered all this evidence, waiting for my return to help me excise the cancer in our organization. David turned to me, his gaze firm. "Madame Chairwoman, as the head of cardiology and a member of the medical board, I can confirm that the lack of this equipment has already negatively impacted patient care. Mr. Thompson's actions are not just embezzlement, they are a direct threat to the lives of our patients. This is an unforgivable crime." David's final statement was the knockout blow. Mark sank to the floor, his eyes vacant, all fight gone out of him. The truth was laid bare for all to see. The lobby now felt like a public courtroom. I knew this was the moment to restore order and reassert my authority. I stepped up onto the small platform at the reception desk and took the microphone from a trembling receptionist. To all staff, patients, and guests present here today, I said, my voice echoing through the large space. What happened here today is a source of great shame for Apex University Hospital. On behalf of the board, I offer my sincerest apologies to all of you for being subjected to this disgraceful scene. I looked out at the crowd, at the faces waiting for change. However, we cannot let the actions of one rotten apple discredit the tireless efforts of the hundreds of dedicated medical professionals who save lives here every day. To stabilize the situation and ensure the hospital's operations continue uninterrupted, I will now make the following executive decisions. The room held its breath. First, I pointed at Mark, still crumpled on the floor. Mr. Mark Thompson is terminated and stripped of all titles and responsibilities. Our legal department will cooperate fully with the district attorney's office to prosecute him for embezzlement and investigate all of his past activities. Security, please escort this man off the premises. 2 large security guards immediately moved in and hauled Mark to his feet. He offered no resistance. His head bowed in shame as they led him through the crowd toward the exit, followed by a chorus of contemptuous whispers. The image of the once dashing CEO was now that of a common criminal. Second, I continued, my voice softening with respect. The CEO position cannot remain vacant. We need a leader with integrity, talent, and compassion to steer this ship through the storm. That person is none other than the man who bravely stood up for what is right today. I turned to David, smiled, and gestured towards him. I am proud to appoint Dr. David Chen as the interim chief executive officer of Apex University Hospital effective immediately. I am confident that with his skill and his moral compass, Dr. Chen will restore this hospital to its rightful place. David was slightly taken aback by my swift decision, but he quickly composed himself. He stepped up onto the platform beside me and bowed his head to the crowd. Instantly, a roar of applause erupted. It started with the junior doctors and nurses and quickly spread to department heads and even patients' families. The thunderous ovation was not just for David. It was an endorsement of my decision. It was applause for justice served. David looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude and resolve. He took the microphone and spoke briefly but powerfully. Thank you for your trust. I promise to do everything in my power to build a healthcare environment that is clean, transparent, and puts the patient first. Thank you. While Mark was being led away and David was being celebrated, there was still one loose end. Tiffany, the once arrogant intern, was now huddled in a corner, her face a mess of smeared makeup and tears. Seeing that the attention was off her, she tried to sneak towards an exit, but Arthur Vance spotted her. He signaled to security, who blocked her path. Miss Jones, where are you going in such a hurry? Arthur asked, his tone polite but chilling. We haven't yet discussed the matter of the chairwoman's suit or the reputational damage you've caused the hospital. Terrified, Tiffany turned to me, her eyes pleading. Her dream of being a tycoon's wife was over. Her only support system arrested. She had nothing left but a mountain of legal trouble. Madam Chairwoman, please forgive me, she whimpered, falling to her knees on the cold floor. I know I was wrong. I'm young and stupid. Mark manipulated me. Please don't fire me. Don't sue me. I don't have any money to pay. I stepped down and walked towards her, looking at the trembling girl at my feet. I didn't feel triumphant, only a sad pity for a life so misguided. You say you were manipulated. Who was it that threatened to have me thrown out? Who screamed at an elderly valet? Who live-streamed herself bragging about ill-gotten wealth? Those were your choices. You were blinded by greed and a delusion of power that never belonged to you. I turned to my lawyer. Arthur, terminate Miss Jones's internship immediately for gross misconduct. Also prepare a file for the DA's office regarding her role as a recipient of embezzled funds. That condo was purchased with stolen money. She will be required to return every cent. Hearing this, Tiffany collapsed completely, sobbing uncontrollably. She knew her life was over. The luxury condo, the designer bags, the lavish trips, it would all be seized. She would be thrown back into a harsh reality branded with a stain she could never wash away. David walked over. He didn't say another word of reprimand. He took a small business card from his pocket and placed it gently on the floor in front of her. "This is the card of a very good psychiatrist," David said calmly. "I think you need help with your personality disorder and delusions of grandeur. I hope that after you've paid the price for your mistakes, you learn how to be a decent human being before you try to be a famous one." David's act, though gentle, was the most profound punishment. It stripped away her last shred of pride, pointing out that she was not just a criminal, but a person with a sick soul. 2 security guards came and lifted Tiffany to her feet, escorting her out. Her cries faded away behind the glass doors. The lobby returned to its normal rhythm, but the air felt cleaner. The crowd dispersed. Doctors and nurses returned to their duties. The automated PA system chimed on as if nothing had happened. I leaned against the reception desk, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The adrenaline rush was gone, leaving behind a deep, bone-weary fatigue. I had endured a long flight, a devastating emotional shock, and a tense showdown. I had won, but my heart felt empty. What was this victory worth when the husband I had once loved was revealed to be such a monster? The family I had fought to protect was now officially broken. David approached me with a bottle of water already opened. He said nothing, just handed it to me and stood in a way that shielded my face from the harsh sunlight streaming through the windows. "Drink some water, Catherine," he said softly. "You did well. Your father would be so proud of you today." I took a small sip. The cool water soothed my dry throat and the bitterness in my soul. I looked up at him, my eyes stinging. "David, I'm so tired. I thought I was strong, but this hurts more than I imagined." He looked at me with deep compassion, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. It was a comforting, steadying touch. "Of course it hurts. You're human, not made of steel," he soothed. "But you were brave enough to face it and cut out the cancer. Now it's time to heal." "I've got things here. Go home and rest." I nodded weakly. I needed to go home, but not to rest. It was time to prepare for the next battle, the divorce. Arthur Vance walked over, still holding the file. He understood immediately. "Madame Chairwoman, I have already drafted the divorce petition. With this evidence of infidelity and embezzlement, the court will grant it swiftly. Would you like to sign?" I took a deep breath, mustering my resolve. "Give me the pen." I signed my name with a firm, unwavering stroke. That signature ended 10 years of my life, ended the illusion of a happy family, and opened a new chapter. "Arthur, begin the proceedings immediately. Freeze all our joint assets. I don't want him to be able to touch another cent. I want him to leave with nothing but the clothes on his back." "Yes, Madam Chairwoman," Arthur said, taking the signed petition with a look of deep respect. I turned to David, a small, weary smile on my face. "Thank you, David. I don't know what I would have done without you today." He smiled warmly, his grin lighting up his serious face. "Don't be a stranger. In his final days, your father realized what Mark was. But it was too late. He made me promise I would always look out for you. A man keeps his promises." I looked deep into his eyes and saw not just friendship, but a profound, steady affection that I had overlooked for so many years. But this wasn't the time for that. I needed time to heal, and he understood. I pulled my suitcase and walked out of the hospital. The afternoon sun cast my long shadow on the pavement. I walked with my head held high, leaving the ruins of my past behind me. Ahead lay a future full of challenges, but also full of hope. And I knew, for the first time in a long time, that I would not be walking it alone. The peace that followed the storm in the hospital lobby was merely the calm before the tsunami. I had just arrived home, not even having had the chance to collapse onto my bed when my phone began buzzing incessantly. It wasn't one call, but a flood of notifications from news alerts and social media. I opened my phone to a barrage of sensational headlines and maliciously edited photos, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. Healthcare Aries assaults young intern in jealous rage. The real story. Cheating wife and doctor lover frame husband to seize company. Drama at apex. CEO overthrown in brutal coup by wife and her lover. Someone had downloaded Tiffany's live stream and expertly doctored it. They cut out the parts where she birred the valet, where she bragged and acted arrogantly. They only kept the clips of me looking stern, of David protectively shielding me, and of Mark kneeling and begging pathetically. The clips were accompanied by thousands of vitriolic comments, clearly orchestrated by a professional troll farm. Look at that wife's cold face. She's a real piece of work. The poor husband. She probably bullies him at home all the time. I heard she's been sleeping with that doctor for years. This was just an excuse to kick her husband to the curb. I dropped the phone, a chill running down my spine. I had underestimated Mark's depravity. Knowing he couldn't win on the facts, he had resorted to scorched earth tactics, using public opinion to destroy my reputation and David's. He wanted to drag me down into the mud with him to twist the narrative until I was the villain. The doorbell rang. It was Arthur. He entered with a grim expression, another file in his hand. "Madame Chairwoman, the situation on social media is deteriorating rapidly," he reported. "Our IT department has traced the campaign back to a black PR firm. They're using thousands of bot accounts to attack the hospital's official pages and your personal profiles. The funds for the campaign were wired from an anonymous account, but I have no doubt it's the last of the money Mark managed to hide." I sank onto the sofa, massaging my throbbing temples. What does he want? Does he think this will get him his job back? No, he knows that's impossible, Arthur surmised. He wants to pressure you into a more favorable divorce settlement. Or more simply, he wants revenge. Cornered people are dangerous. I took a sip of hot tea, forcing myself to think clearly. I will not negotiate, not for a single penny. He chose to play dirty, and I will show him the price of angering a woman who has nothing left to lose. What are your orders? Should we disable comments and issue a press release? I shook my head. No, the more we hide, the guiltier we look. Let them talk. The truth is the only thing that matters. Gold is not afraid of fire. Arthur, arrange a formal press conference for tomorrow morning. Invite everyone, the major news networks, the city papers, and especially the online tabloids that are slandering me. I will face them directly. Arthur nodded, his eyes filled with admiration. Understood. I'll arrange it immediately. That night's sleep was impossible. I wandered through the large, empty mansion, a home once filled with happy memories, now cold and silent. I peeked into my children's rooms. My two little angels were sleeping soundly, oblivious to the storm raging around their mother. I swore to myself that I would be strong for them, for my father's legacy, and for myself. I would not fall. The next morning, the main auditorium at Apex University Hospital was packed with reporters. Camera flashes strobed incessantly. The clicks of shutters creating a tense, suffocating atmosphere. Everyone wanted the inside scoop on the billion-dollar scandal. I walked into the room wearing a simple, conservative black dress, my face made up to look composed and resolute. By my side was David in his familiar white coat, his presence calm and dignified. Our arrival commanded the attention of every camera in the room. We sat at the head table. I opened the press conference, my voice steady and clear. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. My name is Catherine Hayes. I have called this press conference not to defend myself, but to defend the honor of Apex Hospital and its dedicated staff. The information currently circulating on social media is a malicious fabrication edited with the sole intent to defame and slander." A young reporter stood up, posing a sharp question. "Mrs. Hayes, the public believes you and Dr. Chen are having an affair, and that you fired your husband to clear the way for your lover. How do you respond to that?" The room fell silent, waiting for my reaction. But before I could speak, David took the microphone. He stood, looked directly at the reporter, then let his steady gaze sweep across the room. "I would like to answer that question," David said, his deep voice carrying clearly through the speakers. "Regarding the relationship between myself and Chairwoman Hayes, I can confirm that we are old friends from medical school, trusted colleagues, and professional partners. There is absolutely no illicit affair, as the rumors claim." He paused, taking a breath. "However, I will not hide one truth. I have had feelings for Catherine for 15 years, since we were students through her marriage, and to this day. It is a love born of respect and admiration. But I have never once crossed the ethical line of a friend or a physician. I kept those feelings to myself so that she could be happy. But today, seeing her slandered by a coward, I can no longer remain silent." David's frank and courageous confession stunned the entire room. No one expected a man as successful and private as him to publicly declare his unrequited love to defend the woman he cared for. The murmurs died down, replaced by looks of sympathy and respect. David continued, signaling an assistant to project an image onto the large screen behind them. It was a DNA lab report. "As for the real reason Mr. Thompson was fired, this is the evidence we held back yesterday, hoping to grant him a final shred of dignity. He has proven he doesn't deserve it. This is a DNA test confirming the paternity of Mr. Mark Thompson and a 3-year-old boy currently living at the Rosebud Children's Home." The auditorium erupted in gasps. Every camera swiveled to the screen. "Mr. Thompson fathered a child with another woman 4 years ago, long before he met the intern, Tiffany Jones. After the mother passed away from an illness, he abandoned his own son at a children's home. He has never once visited or provided any support despite living a life of luxury. A man who not only cheats on his wife and embezzles from his company, but who also abandons his own flesh and blood. Does a man like that have any right to speak of morality or play the victim?" This revelation was a knockout punch that completely decimated public opinion. All suspicion against me vanished, replaced by a wave of intense fury directed at Mark. The image of the dignified CEO was shattered, replaced by the portrait of a cold, heartless monster. I looked at David, overwhelmed with emotion. To protect me, he had exposed the deepest corner of his own heart. He had silently found that poor child to help me turn the tide. The press conference ended in a decisive victory for the truth. The subsequent news reports were a complete reversal, praising my courage and David's integrity while fiercely condemning Mark's actions. After the press conference, Mark was completely ostracized. He lost not only his job and reputation, but was also relentlessly attacked by the public. Friends who once fawned over him now avoided his calls. The money he had managed to hide was quickly depleted by the PR firm's fees and his own lavish spending habits. Desperate and broke, Mark remembered the expensive gifts he had lavished on Tiffany. The luxury condo, the car, the designer jewelry. He decided it was his property, and he had the right to take it back to pay his debts and hire a lawyer. He showed up at her condo, the one my lawyers had put a lien on, but hadn't yet seized, drunk and furious, banging on the door. When Tiffany opened it, her expression was not one of longing, but of pure contempt. She too was facing ruin, fired, broke, and publicly shamed. "What are you doing here?" she sneered. "Come to leech off me? I'm about to be on the street myself. Give me back the car keys and all the jewelry I gave you," Mark screamed, storming into the apartment. "It was my money." "You have to give it back. Your money," Tiffany laughed mockingly. "That was the money you stole from the hospital. It's evidence now. Did you think I was stupid enough to keep it and go to jail with you? I sold it all to pay my fines and legal fees." Hearing this, Mark snapped. He lunged at Tiffany, but this time she fought back. She clawed at his face, bit his arm, fighting like a cornered animal. "You pathetic loser. You dare hit me again, I'll kill you," she screamed. A vicious brawl ensued. The sound of breaking furniture and shouting filled the hallway, and neighbors called the police. When the NYPD arrived, they found a pathetic scene. Mark and Tiffany, clothes torn, faces bruised, wrestling on a floor littered with broken glass. They were both arrested for disorderly conduct and assault. The next day, photos of Mark in handcuffs, his face swollen, sitting next to a disheveled Tiffany, appeared online with the headline, "Bitter End." Disgraced CEO and mistress brawl over stolen fortune. Reading the news, I felt no satisfaction, only a sad pity for lives ruined by their own greed. A month later, the divorce proceedings began. Mark sat opposite me in court with a state-appointed public defender. He looked 10 years older, his hair streaked with gray. The judge reviewed the mountain of evidence against him. He pleaded guilty to everything. He knew it was hopeless. When the judge granted me sole custody of our children, he finally broke down and sobbed, perhaps the last shred of his humanity surfacing. As he was being led away to face his criminal trial, he passed by me and whispered, "I'm sorry, Catherine." I didn't reply. An apology now was meaningless. I turned and walked toward the sunlit doors of the courthouse. David was waiting for me outside, a warm smile on his face. The sky over New York was a brilliant, clear blue, heralding a new beginning. In the aftermath, I poured all my energy into rebuilding Apex. With David by my side as CEO, we purged the corruption Mark had left behind and revitalized the hospital's mission. Apex not only recovered, but thrived, becoming a beacon of medical excellence and integrity. Mark was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for embezzlement. Tiffany, I heard, ended up working at a rundown convenience store in a small town in the Midwest, her dreams of fame and fortune reduced to the quiet beep of a cash register. 1 year after that fateful day, on a crisp autumn evening, David took me to dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Hudson River. After the meal, he slid a small, elegantly wrapped box across the table. Inside was not a diamond ring, but a stunning, intricately detailed crystal model of a human heart. "Catherine," he began, his voice filled with an emotion that spanned 16 years. "I'm a cardiologist. I've spent my life studying the heart, but the one heart I've never fully understood is yours. This crystal heart represents my feelings for you, transparent, unconditional, and constant. I know you've been hurt, and your heart needs time to heal. Would you let me be your personal physician and take care of that heart for the rest of your life?" Tears of happiness streamed down my face. I looked from the crystal heart to the man before me, the boy from med school, the brilliant doctor, the man who had been my anchor in the storm. "Yes, doctor." "Chen," I whispered, smiling through my tears. "I will, but you have to promise me this treatment plan lasts a lifetime." 5 years later, we stood side by side cutting the ribbon for the new state-of-the-art Catherine Hayes wing of Apex University Hospital. Later that afternoon, our family, me, David, and my 2 children, who now lovingly called him Dad, were strolling through the hospital gardens. My 2 kids were running ahead, their laughter filling the air. As we passed a side gate, I saw him. A middle-aged man in shabby clothes stood across the street, his hair completely white, his face etched with hardship. It was Mark, released early for good behavior. He had nothing. No family, no career, no home. He just stood there watching us with an expression of profound regret. David squeezed my hand. "Do you want to talk to him?" I watched Mark for a long moment, then shook my head. The anger and hatred were long gone, replaced by a quiet pity. The past was the past. Raking it up would only disturb the beautiful peace we had worked so hard to build. "No," I said, turning to my family with a smile. "Let's go home. The kids are hungry." I took David's hand, and without looking back, we walked towards the warm setting sun. I understood then that the best revenge is not to crush your enemies, but to build a life so full of happiness and light that their darkness can no longer touch you. And I, Catherine Hayes, had done just